Hi, my name is Cindy Rang.
I'm Eliza Rang.
And we are going to make a mug rug for Father's Day. My daughter and I have owned and operated a busy quilt shop in Washington State for over 20 years. We have a retreat center, an active YouTube channel, and a large pattern line featuring our creations. My two sons work on machines. One daughter-in-law is our videographer and the other is a long-arm quilter. We are a family that love each other, we laugh together, and every once in a while we get some work done. We have a crew that are saints for their efforts at keeping us on track. Thanks for joining us on our wild ride. And I've been thinking about this for a while, so I was thinking for Dad to have his morning coffee, just think, what would he like with coffee?
Eggs and toast.
How do I know this? Because her dad is my son. He wants eggs and toast. Eggs and toast. Where's my eggs and toast? What if we make a mug rug for his eggs and toast? Out of eggs and toast. So this is what I was thinking. So I kind of feel like this is going to work out. So we're going to do this. We're going to go through this together. And I think that this will work. So it's going to kind of be a fun technique because what we'll do, instead of binding, we're going to do a technique where we're going to put some fusible web on, which is our ironing on. And then we're going to sew, turn it right side out, top stitch, and we'll be done. So it'll be kind of fun. So we're going to do a little 3D egg and a little 3D toast, put it together. I think it's going to be super cute, right? So I have a pattern. I've written this up and it's ready to go, but we'll see how this goes to see if we need to modify that because you're my test subject. I did not make one yet. So we'll make this first one together. So all you're going to need is just a few fabrics, and really it's just a couple fat quarters. You're going to need fabric for your toast. So this is what I think the toast should be, and I think this is what the crust would be.
Yeah, because that's definitely dark enough for toast and
I think so.
for crust.
I think so. And then a little pat of butter for your toast. So kind of simple.
Because
and then
my
you just
dad
need loves butter. You could make it, I guess, jelly if you want. You could do all kinds of things. And then, oh, that'd be fun.
Jelly would be fun.
See, I keep thinking other things. Anyways, we'll come back to that. And an egg, right? So we got the white and we have the yolk. So you don't need very much fabric and just little bits. You do need some kind of a batting. We've talked about battings before because we've been making mug rugs all year. And you can kind of use whatever you'd like for batting. If you have just a little scrap of cotton, a little scrap of polyester, if you want to use the Ensel Bright, you can use whatever. But keep in mind that what a mug rug is for, it's just basically a coaster, right? So it really, the idea is to be a little bit absorbent and for it to protect your table. So I kind of like the fusible batting. So we tend to use this most often because it stays in place. It is polyester. Works pretty good. This happens to be just a little piece we've been kind of working on. So that's what we're going to use. You do also need a little bit of fusible web. We like the Steam-A-Seam product, which is sticky on both sides. So that's what we like to use. But if there's another fusible web that you like, there's other brands. Fusible web is the product. Steam-A-Seam is the brand. And so that's what we like. And whenever you're using fusible web, you do need to use a pencil.
Yes.
Because ink will skip on this fabric and you don't want to use that. You'll need an iron, good pair of scissors, and
a purple thing.
A purple thing. And a purple thing, if you don't know what this is, it's like a $2 tool. I have so many of them because I have them everywhere in my sewing room because I can never do without it. What a purple thing is it is a bodkin for one thing. So it has a little eye right there so that you can thread something through. So if you're putting in like a elastic, if you're doing something where you're threading something through. But then the other thing that it'll do is when you're turning something out, you've got a flat side and a pokey side. Yeah. And you'll see how we use this as we're using this, but a couple dollars, super fun. And we're going to be using the iron. So what little Miss likes are her little, what are they called? Thermal thimbles. Yes. They come like this. They come in a set of 3. So you've got kind of a big, medium and a small one. And when I use them, I put them on my fingers like this. So I have one on my thumb, my index finger, my middle finger. But little Miss likes them on all of her fingers, just like Olive's, right? So she wears them everywhere. I know. And what they are is it's made out of not Kevlar, but it's made out of a product that will protect your fingers when you're getting kind of close to the iron. You still want to keep your fingers away, you know, and not be crazy about it. But if you're ever ironing something and you keep touching, you know, the edge, this way you won't have any burns. So that's what they're for. Okay, so now we're ready to get started. So what we've done is we went ahead and did a little bit of pre-cutting, and what we suggest in the pattern is really you only need about 7-inch squares of the fabric that we showed you. So we went ahead and cut up our fabric. The other thing that we did was we traced our egg onto freezer paper. We'll show you why we need that in just a second. And then we traced our piece of toast onto our steam-a-seam that we used, and we traced our yolk and our pat of butter. So what we're going to do first is we're going to fuse down our yolk. I'm going to let you do this. So you just take your little sticky, and on the wrong side of your fabric, we're going to, iron that on there. And then our pat of butter. And when you use steam-a-seam, people will say, oh gosh, you know, it didn't stick or whatever. But keep in mind that if you look at this up close, what you'll see is here's where we drew. This is the part that's sticky. And so if something happens and it comes off, and as you're peeling off your pattern and you see that that's over there, just grab it and put it back over and you're okay. So same thing. Let's fuse down our pat of butter. And then our toast. We'll do the same thing. There you go. And then once you fuse those down, again, I think I mentioned that when you trace your pattern, you always want to use a lead pencil, because with that iron and rubbing against this kind of a plasticized waxy covered paper, ink will bleed and possibly bleed onto your fabric. All right, honey, let's cut out. Let's grab those other pair of scissors there. And let's cut out. What do you want to cut out? Sometimes when you're cutting through things that have fusible web on them, you might end up getting a little bit of sticky residue on your scissors. The easiest way to clean off your scissors is just to use a piece of wool. If you don't have any scrap of wool laying around, if you order from us, just put in your little notes that you need a scrap of wool to clean your scissors, and we're more than happy to just throw that in as a little gift. We certainly have scraps of wool, okay? Oh yeah, sorry. I didn't bring the good scissors, did I? Okay, so we have cut out our pat of butter, our little egg yolk. We cut out our piece of toast. We still have our 2 squares of what would essentially be, one is going to be the crust and the other one is going to be the back. And these are our 2 7-inch squares for our egg. And this is our freezer paper. And we really did trace it with just a pencil, but I went ahead and went over it just so you'd be able to see it. So all we're going to do is we're going to take this freezer paper, and Eliza, go ahead and just fuse that down. And again, what the reason is for the freezer paper is it will just stick. So instead of having to trace your pattern onto fabric or trace your pattern onto pattern paper that you're then going to pin down, what works really well with this is you can see that your pattern is not going anywhere. It's totally stuck right there. And what she's actually going to do is she's just going to sew right on that line. And so all we have to do is we're going to layer right sides together, our 2 pieces of fabric, and then we're going to put that on afterwards. And then we need our piece of batting. So let's cut that out.
Do not forget it.
No, don't forget your batting. And what we'll do is we're going to layer these 3 together, and then we do go ahead and use a pin You can use one pin or even two, but the reason you're doing the pin is really to hold your 3 layers of fabric together, because your pattern, of course, is not going anywhere. Okay, we're gonna go over to the sewing machine and she's gonna sew right on the line. Okay, so she has sewn on the line, and if something happens and you get off of the line a little bit, a lot of it sort of depends on something that's kind of a free form pattern like an egg, totally not gonna matter. A lot of it just sort of depends on what you're doing. And then all you're going to do is you're going to rip this off, and once you get it started, what you want to do is, if you're kind of holding on to where the stitches are, just to make sure that you don't pull out any stitches, then you're good to go. The other thing that you can do is you can ever so gently, just be careful about this, you can kind of score your paper just to kind of make it a little bit easier. So she's going to pull all that off and then we'll be right back. All right, so she's torn all of this off, and if you still end up with funny little bits, you know, you can pick at it if you want to, but you do want to be careful not to pick your stitches out. And all this is paper. And so what will happen is by the time you're done, it's really just going to be dryer lint. So it's not a huge deal if you don't get all of it. Okay, so now, I don't know if you can see in the camera her sewing line, but what we're going to do is we're going to come around and we're going to cut. Let me do it this way and you can see it. Let me give this to you. But we're going to cut our seam allowance past where we've sewn. And typically in quilting, we talk about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. But when it comes to this stitch and turn kind of a thing, we actually have oftentimes less than 1/4 inch, just because we don't want all of that bulk in our seam allowance, especially where we have a curve. And in fact, when we have a curve, we even make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to, here I said it was going to be, okay. So after you've made it all the way around, then what you're going to do is where there's these kind of curves, we're just going to snip just a little bit. You just want to make sure that when you do snip, that you don't go all the way into the stitches, of course, but all you're doing is you're just making, and you'll see why in a second when you turn this right side out. Because now what you're, yeah, because it's like, there's no hole. So how are we going to turn that right side out? Does it seem like I made a mistake?
Yes.
I did not. And I'm going to show you why. But first, we're going to do the toast. So we're going to do the toast almost the same way. So we've got this guy, and what we're going to do is we're going to put this one right sides together, and we're going to add our batting.
We're not adding this right into the
Not yet, because what's going to happen, so what we're going to do is we're going to, so we've got our right sides together, and we have our batting piece, whatever that is, and our toast. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to draw a line. Now you could go ahead and trace this same piece of toast onto freezer paper, iron it on, and do your stitch line if you'd like to, but what's a little bit easier is just to take whatever appropriate marking utensil, and you can use that same pencil if you want to, because we're on the wrong side of the fabric, or if you need a better mark, you knew it, didn't you? You can use a friction marker. We like a friction marker because the friction marker, it's going to look almost like, it looks just like ink, but actually it's this iron off magical ink that works really good. And you can see, I don't know if they can tell in the video, but we can see that, yeah, the ink is much, much darker than the pencil is. So what's going to happen is when we turn this right side out, this is where the toast is going to be, right?
Yes.
And so, and in fact, I'm going to make a little mark so that I know what corner and where it fits. You feel like you kind of know, but it's like, is that the top, is that the bottom, how does it fit? So we've got that. And then This is not really the sewing line. This is going to be the line that we're going to fuse the toast on, and you'll see it in a second. So instead what we're going to come out about the width of our presser foot. So we're going to come out about a 1/2 inch, and we're going to sew all the way around. If you're nervous about it, you could actually draw a line. And again, this is just the pattern according to me. So you could make it a little bit different if you want to. You could make it a little bit thinner. But if you wanted to just go ahead and draw it so that you can see exactly where you're sewing, you can do that also. I'll just do this so that you can. Yeah, it still looks like a piece of toast, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so either way, you can have this and follow this as a line or draw your own line. So now she's going to do the same thing. We're going to go to the sewing machine and she's going to sew on this outer line all the way around. Okay, so she has sewn all the way around. And again, since we use this friction marker, show them what magically happens. All of the mark goes away. So now get that one up there too. So then all that's left is the weird little pencil-y mark, but we don't even care about that. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same thing that we did with the egg, right? So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give this to you. And you're going to come around. I'm just gonna let you. So again, roughly, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch. You don't have to do that full quarter. But you know, the deal with seam allowances is that you don't have to do that full 5/8 inch seam allowance, which is what we do when we make clothing. The reason you do that is if you ever have to take something out or, you know, adjust something. You can, I'm just talking while you're cutting.
I know, but I can't.
Oh, I know. I don't know where our little purple scissors are. I can talk and cut at the same time. We did not give her the best scissors. Sorry about that. And instead of dashing out and getting the good ones out of the sewing room, we are just going to muscle through these. But in quilting, we do a 1/4 inch. And the reason that we do a 1/4 inch is because all of the math is dependent on that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Your block size will not come out right if you don't do it. But for this, we just have to make sure that the seam allowance is enough that the stitches don't come out. And we don't want all of that bulk in our piece. Okay, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now what we have is we have this goofy little egg, this goofy little piece of toast. And how are you going to flip it right? I know, isn't that weird? I'm going to show you a little secret. Here's what we're going to do. Instead of, because sometimes we'll make something and then you have to tuck everything in, press it super careful, and then you have to hand stitch it closed, right? What we're going to do instead is we're going to make a hole. So we're going to take this, we've got the batting on this side. We have our fabric. And you have to pull it apart and you have to kind of feel it just to make sure that you've got only one piece of fabric in here. Do you know what we're going to do yet?
Snip?
Yes, snip, snip. Can't. Oh, there we go. So what you're going to do is you're going to be fairly careful. Sorry. I drink my coffee. And we're just going to make a little hole. So we're just going to come through. And where we're going to make this hole. Dang it.
Okay, now I'm confused.
It looks like we just ruined it, right? Oh no! Ha.
You just ruined it.
No. What we're going to do is that's where we're going to fuse. We're going to cover that hole. So once we've done that, we're going to turn this right side out. Use the purple thing. Do you know now what's going to happen?
Yeah, the egg's going to cover the hole.
Well, technically, yes. But the other thing that's going to happen, I've got lint in my throat, is this little guy.
Sick.
Cover that hole. All right, so press him. Dang it. And so what you can do with this purple thing, can I show them and before you do this? So here's your little edges, and you can use one of two things. You can either use this tip part or this flat part. And all you have to do is go in, and what you're doing is you're just making sure that all of your edges are all the way out. Same thing on your corner. And if you just kind of run that along the edge there, that's what's going to give you that nice flat
And you
turned
can see
edge.
how it gets.
You can see that. And now the other thing too is you've got that fusible batting in there. And so what'll happen is as you press that, after you've turned that right side out, that whole thing will just get flatter. All right, so she's going to work on that one. While she's working on that one, guess what I'm going to do with this?
Do the same thing?
I'm going to do the same thing. But now this one is a little bit more tricky. That one, I could have cut it even bigger, but I clearly didn't need to. But this one, I just have to make a tiny little hole because that's where my yolk is going to go. So I'm just going to go right into the center. The hardest part about this is being able to feel that you only have one piece of fabric there, not two. So we'll make a little snip first, just to make sure. Okay. And I've actually kind of cut like a plus in this one. Yeah, and again, it just has to be small enough that the yolk fits over the top of it. We're going to do the same thing. Okay, so she's been fussing with this, and again, same thing. So you can see that with this purple thing, what happens, you see that little curve right there? So what you can do is you just slide this in here, and then you just kind of push out all of that seam allowance. So you have that nice curve there. And you can actually do it over where you're ironing, because if something happens, and even if, like, see where it is, even if I put my iron down there, it doesn't, you're not going to melt it. It's not that kind of plastic. So it's this harder stuff. So I'll let you kind of keep fussing with it here a minute. And remember, we've got that fusible web in there. Fusible batting in there. And so you don't want, if you're using fusible batting, you don't want to, I'll let you go ahead. You don't want to be pressing it really until you know that you have those corners out. It's not that you can't kind of reposition that fusible batting, but you really want it to be where you want it to be. So this little curve right here, I'm just going to put that in, and what'll happen is that'll help you to push out all of that seam allowance, and you can see that all the way around. And then after you have that all out, again, that's where those little thermal finger ones come in, and then that way you can just go ahead and iron that down. Oops. Tuck out. Okay. I'm gonna, there you go. Okay, and so now, perfect, good job, honey. Okay, so now what's going to happen is she has this little egg here, so we're going to go ahead and peel off our yolk and patch our hole. So what's really nice about this is, very good, is it on the super side? Yes. Is when we do it this way, there's no binding to deal with. There's no flipping and stitching, no hand stitching, anything like that. Go ahead and peel off the bread side, and again, here's our little hole. If you have trouble starting it, you can fold it over like a dog ear. It'll work. All right. And then just kind of position it. You can position it a couple times, because if you don't like where it is, you can lift it up and put it down. So the whole idea is, of course, this is supposed to look like the crust. All right, and if you like it, oh yeah, and now we gotta put your pat of butter on there. Perfect. All right, now give it another press. Iron all of that down. perfect. Let's iron that one on. Okay, so the last part is the sewing. So what I would do with this is so it's going to take a little bit of time. We're going to watch you do this and we're going to do some pictures at the end. But what I would do is take white thread and I would sew around the edge. The reason for that is it just gives it this nice, really pretty finished edge. It also kind of quilts it. I would take yellow thread and sew around the inside here. And then I would take a tan thread, or if you just did like a pale yellow, you don't have to change your thread at all. Sew around your pat of butter, sew around the inside. And once you have all three finished pieces, you have a piece of toast, you have a piece of egg. But what I would do is I would go ahead and layer it. And you could decide kind of how you want it to be. It doesn't really matter. And then what I would do with my last piece is then right here where you've stitched down, I would just go over that again. And I would just stitch that down on there. And that's what's going to hold them together. If you decide that you want to keep them separate and have kind of a, two different pieces, you could do that. But the whole idea of a mug rug is that it's big enough for, again, your cup of coffee and a little snack. Because if he thinks he's getting eggs and toast, he's actually getting a cup of coffee and, I don't know, a smidgen of something. So anyway, and that also gives you a chance, if you don't like the outside stitching of something, you could hide that. That would be a perfect spot for where you're going to put your egg, and you get to decide where your egg's going to go, right?
Yeah.
All right. Off you go. Okay. All done. Super, super cute. Little eggs and toast. So adorable. So you can see that wherever she decided to put that, then all she did is she just sewed. I'm going to flip that over and you can see the stitching. So all she did was she just stayed right on that same line. You just back stitch, follow that yoke line, back stitch, follow that line, and back stitch. All good to go. Ready to go. And if you don't like the lines that you see on the back, you can easily put a label, which you should do anyway. Just put a little label, Happy Father's Day, and anyway.
Now I'm hungry.
Now you're hungry for what?
Eggs and toast.
Eggs and toast. All right. Happy sewing, you guys. Thanks.
Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.
Okay. Okay.
So cute.
Feel about your egg. Feel like it looks like an egg? Totally looks like an egg. Okay, so, or a hat. Could be a hat. An egg head. Oh, that was clever. That's funny.